Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and start. I will call to order the Budget and Fiscal Affairs Oversight Committee. Thank everyone for coming, and if you would all join me as we welcome our newest member from House District 2, right? House District 2, Representative Steve Tarvin, to my right in here. Since we're running a little late today, you're going to have to cut your opening introduction down to like 15 to 20 minutes today rather than the usual. No, seriously, the Senator Bethel is, I'm told, on his way. We're right now trying to ascertain that if that was from the Capitol or from Dalton. But he is on his way. But out of the interest of time, because I know some members have other places they need to be, I wanted to start this for the senator and before he gets here and explain the second section of the bill. I'll let the senator explain the first section when he gets here. But we're working from Senate Bill 288, SB 88/FA/2. And I have passed out the bill. In Senate committee, there was an amendment to add to the gentleman's original proposition the reconstitution. Okay. All right, since we're back on that. And if there's no objection, we'll be adjourned. No. Senator, are you ready? We're going to run you right to the front of the class if you're ready.
I apologize. No time. I moved the table.
So, well, Senator, no, we appreciate it. Jordan, can you get the senator a copy of the bill? We were just calling. I was going to go over Section 2 and some things that we need. But if you would, Senator, tell us about the bill. What we'd like to do, we do need, and I'm sorry since we got started here late, I haven't talked to you, but I talked to Legislative Council. We may need to make a technical correction in order to get you where you want to go with Section 2 of the bill. So we won't be able to move the bill for you today, but let's get the hearing portion of it out and go forward. So if you'll present the bill, and then I can share with you what I found out about Section 2.
I thought that my office had submitted the chair a proposed committee sub because I assume that the issue you have in Section 2 is the same issue that I have, which is we can't do it this way. I'll address that. When Senator Underman offered her amendment, it was to reinstitute the Joint Oversight Committee. Doing so in the Senate with the full language would have created a floor amendment pursuant to Senate rules that would have, if adopted and passed, would have sent it back to our Rules Committee. Her intent was not to derail the process going forward, so she offered this amendment, and my commitment there on the floor was that I would offer a committee substitute here. I do apologize. We do have that prepared, and so I will make sure it's in the chairman's office as soon as possible. Senate Bill 288 is, quite frankly, just a transparency bill. It is designed to allow for organizations that schools which derive public funds from the state of Georgia are members, which provide extracurricular activities, and those activities are functionally subsidized by taxpayer dollars, that they would provide and publish to their members a financial report. It's really sort of that straightforward, that they would provide the financials. Obviously, once they provide them to their members, that makes it an open record, so the public has access to any of the records. The most notable entity which this would directly impact would be the Georgia High School Association. It is not my intent to single them out. It's just that's the group I know the most about. This would apply in the future if they had direct competition in their field, but also any entity. And the way I describe it is when an event takes place at a school or a public school, athletics, most often the facility itself is obviously paid for by the taxpayer. It's maintained by the taxpayer. In many instances, a lot of the equipment that's used in practice and competition was paid with tax dollars. And this group, again, and I said this in the Senate, and I believe it, I played GHSA athletics when I was a young man, and I think they provide a quality of service to their members which is very high, and the standard of athletics and extracurricular. We keep saying athletics. They also have debate and one-act plays and all those sorts of things that our kids participate in, which are great. And I think the status of those competitions is very high in Georgia. But I do think that there are always questions of me as a legislator in my district about what are we doing for education, where's the money going. We don't have enough money for balls, we don't have enough money for shoes for our team members, and so here's another place where money that's associated with athletics and extracurricular and education is being spent. I think it's appropriate that we have the whole picture, that the public have access to all that information. Section 2, as I mentioned, was an amendment in the Senate, and as the chair knows, there was an joint oversight committee between the House and Senate that was previously in place. It was offered by Senator Underman. I supported that, reinstituting that committee, and just again serving an oversight function. Some of the reports have said that the bill purports to have the General Assembly run the GHSA or take over the GHSA, and I strongly disagree with that characterization, and I deny that intention. We've got plenty to say grace over here, as you all know, and I just do think it's appropriate, pursuant to that amendment. The Senate position is that we should exercise oversight over the group. So.
Thank you, Senator. Will you take questions?
Of course.
We have one. Let me, for your information, what I have taken the liberty to do is put in the members' packages here the original of House Bill 1316 that formed the committee in 2006, along with a jotted down note of the date it passed the House and the Senate and the date the governor signed it in 2006, because I believe this is the language your staff probably went back to get to include in Section 2. I'm not positive if you guys over there may have changed the way. At the time, it said the Senate Committee on Assignments would name the co-chair. I don't know what your rules are, but I'll leave that to you. If it's if there isn't a Committee on Assignments, or if that's the LG.
The language in the committee sub should read the Lieutenant Governor.
So, but in the meantime, the committee members, as we're looking, can take this language, because you intend to, perhaps with that exception, map after the regular.
That's exactly right.
So what I was talking to, ladies and gentlemen, before the senator arrived, is you can take this document, and I believe that'll be substantially what the senator will include in the committee sub he has for us later. You have a question, Chairman Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am better than I deserve. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing this legislation. I've got a couple of questions that I want to ask you, and I support this legislation. I just want to let you know off right now. But the two questions that I have is, number one, to release the financial information within 90 days of the end of their fiscal or their calendar year. From a practical standpoint, is that enough time?
I believe that it is. If the representation is otherwise, I mean, I'm certainly amenable to looking at that. I should have said this at the outset. When the legislation began moving in the House, the GHSA actually within a week, and I really appreciate it, posted their audited financial report on their website. So it is accessible now for you to be able to review that on their website. You sort of have to follow some drop-down links. I would say that 90 days, 3 months, most organizations that I'm familiar with can comply within that amount of time to put their financials out. They're obviously going to report a year-end in any event.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that was the first question. And thank you for that. The second one is, and you're talking about sporting events and sporting activities. Another question arose, and I just kind of opening up ideas and thoughts. You know, a lot of our schools are SACS accredited, And should this perhaps be expanded so that we see the financials for any organization, whether it's sponsors sporting events or academic events or anything? Should we open this up a little bit broader so that any organization that they're a member of, they need to be able to post their financials?
I think it would be a worthwhile endeavor to pursue. I have not included that in this legislation for two primary reasons. I don't know the scope, the reach, and most of the organizations that you described, SACS, and then there are some others, SREB and some things like that, they are multi-state in nature. And to the extent I would pursue that, it would be my intention, if I were advancing that issue, certainly the will of the committee in the House I respect, I would want to engage members in legislatures in other states to see if they had a similar appetite or that there was something that could be worked out, because if we impose it on our schools on a multi-state issue, are we putting them at a disadvantage with their regional alliances? So.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. And Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Senator, for this piece of legislation. I'm not sure what you're trying to do. I'm sorry I had to step out for a moment. Maybe you explained it why. I received a lot of calls this year. I'm an old educator of 31 years, and I coach boys basketball myself for Henry County. Matter of fact, my old superintendent is sitting back there, and I shouldn't say old.
Former.
Yes, I received a few calls recently on the prices of some of the football tickets. And they were telling me that tickets have gone up to $20. And I said, there's no way. And for a family of five, $100, that's quite a bit of money. And I was wondering why are these guys, is there any reason maybe your piece of legislation can bring forward the money involved, how much money was made, if this is even necessary, even on the local level? Yeah. Some tickets were $10. I mean, this is community. This is how community meet each other and talk and see about, their children. And I mean, I think things kind of, I understand that the inflation is tough and the economy is tough, but, and it really does cost a lot for these local foot teams to put a team out on the field. And I was just wondering, were you going to address some of that?
Well, thank you, Representative. I think that your questions are the sorts of questions that prompted the bill, and that is folks who say they want to know, they want to better understand it. Like I say, I don't know all of how they operate. I've participated, I've gone to events, and there have been a lot of questions raised. The GHSA does not establish rates for regular season competition. So what's happening at schools and what's happening in districts during regular season is up to the local school and the local district. They do regulate prices in postseason play. Having said that, I imagine that it is quite expensive. I mean, I've never done it myself, but quite expensive to rent the Georgia Dome. I don't know whether the advertising revenue that they generate from that event when they put it on GPTV and State Farm is a proud sponsor and all those, I just don't know, and I think neither does the public. So when folks get up and say, I'd like to take my family and my children to see their brother play in a state championship game and that's going to cost us $120, that's a lot of money. That's a lot for any family, I think, to try and do. But that may be the right price based on the venue, and that may cause people to say, maybe that's not where we should have the championship game. I don't know. Like I say, I'm not on the board at GHSA, but I do think that the public should know what the figures are. And I think that's helpful. If you look out there, you can now see how much money is delegated for training of officials, referees, and those sorts of things. I know as a coach, you probably never had any problems with officials. They were probably always perfect and right on spot. But you may think, hey, wait a second, for what we're doing, we need to spend more resources on educating and training our officials. You now have access to that information if you can see it. Are we spending more, 3 times as much on trophies and awards as we are on officials and those sorts of things? You can see it.
Mr. Chairman, follow up. Another question I had, when you look at the scores table for basketball, and I will admit it's gotten a little bit better as far as diversity. But I did notice that not very many females. But and I'm speaking as far as African Americans also. I've always had a problem. But once you're in those two, you don't want to create that problem. But I hope that we look at all, different parts of it, because some things have changed. And I noticed those people collecting the tickets were a little, didn't quite look like I thought they should look. And I'm just looking at all. I'm not trying to be funny or trying to bring up anything that's that's not necessary. I just think it's important that diversity is important, because I want those athletes to see that there are other things that they can do once they've gone beyond their playing days.
I appreciate the comment, Representative. I think that to the extent that the legislature has interest in trying to promote a sort of a new era in high school athletics, then the oversight committee would be an appropriate place, which is what would be in the Section 2 area, to express that interest to the board. GHSA has an executive board that operates the organization, and there is another bill which may yet be in this committee here in the next week or so that came out of the Senate, which has more far-reaching implications in terms of the operation, board membership, and makeup, and those sorts of things. Senator Mullis introduced that bill, and it has passed the Senate, and it may be that bill has more of the sort of specific provisions that you would look for, but my effort is just really focused on the transparency aspect and the oversight aspect.
Okay, thank you.
If I can, and Representative Caldwell has a question next, but to follow up on Representative Jordan's, we had in the past, I had personally expressed some concern about the prices. I know locally during regular games or that, and I'll just say this and as a comment or pose it to you as a question. I don't care what you charge me. And Mr. Yao, I know we're going to give you a chance to do this. But I expressed all the way back in 05 and 06 my concern that a high school student, a 13-year-old, and I personally witnessed a situation in 2004 when Melton was playing the state baseball championship where a mother and a father brought 3 kids under the age of 6 and had to pay $60 for them to watch the high school championship. It was $12 each because that was the rule. And the rule is that it's like a college football. If your heart's beating, you pay it. Right. Theoretically, if you brought a baby in arms, it's $12. I'm not sure they go quite that far. But I had expressed some concern with that. I mean, to me as an adult, charge me what the market will bear. But someone that is student age, we should, in my opinion, encourage the youth in our community to go to these events and support their fellow students, their colleagues, if you will. To that end, I have ask Legislative Council to draft something for your consideration, and I want to have a conversation with the Georgia High School about asking them to, not setting a price, but asking them to really look at playoff events for students and below to give them or keep them at a reasonable price. I'll go so far as to say if you rent the Dome, the bets are off on that because I don't know what it costs and how you do that. If you have to rent the Macon Civic Center or the Gwinnett Arena to have wrestling, I mean, that's different. But on a school property, a playoff game, I just have watched kids, turn around at the door because they didn't have the $12 to watch their big brother play. And that's not a place I want to see us go. I think that's a bad example. I mean, I played a little bit of college football as one of the little bitty guys, in the thing. But even when we played, we were given 2 or 4 passes to the game for immediate family. You don't even get that in high school. I mean, so we have it. Anyway, so Representative Ford, I agree. I'm sure we can find, an opportunity to encourage a conversation for Georgia High School and their member institutions to encourage folks to come. So if the senator would be amenable to
welcome
work,
the
because again, I don't want to do that. Moving along, Representative Caldwell, and then you're next. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Gentleman yields to you, Madam Chairman.
Well, I think it's really important for the students, but we have so many single mothers raising children and families having a hard time, and I'd hate to see any family parent not be able to afford to go see their child play ball. I mean, that's not what it's all about. And I think anybody should be able to see their child play ball. And it shouldn't be a burden for the family.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Senator. So I'm almost sure I know the answer to this question, but I wanted to make sure to ask it. You mentioned during your presentment other associations debate, that kind of thing. From my reading of the legislation, it looks like this is strictly athletics and sport events. Should I expect to see this applying to things like debate club and knitting competitions?
No. My point is that the GHSA, who would be covered by the definition, also provides and governs, to my knowledge, really all public school interscholastic competition in Georgia. There is Glory for Christ League, which is private schools. There's the GISA, which is private schools. I know of no other public school sanctioning body in Georgia. There may be, but they are the ones who do that. So my point is that they would be governed because they do these events, and if somebody came up that only did the other stuff.
So you catch these because it's sort of a catch-all.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Coach Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator,
Yes, sir.
I believe I'm understanding your bill as to that funds that are received from QBE, you just want to see more transparency, how the money is spent, where it's going, and, the person that's receiving it, and basically the distribution, rather, on the high school. I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've been a football coach and also been a referee. But as far as the referee end is that most organizations train their people within, and hope they're still doing that, such that the kids get good quality calls when they're playing the game, because they're out there practicing 2 and 3 days a week, and they would want to have the person that understand the rules and know the rules so that they can implement the rules when the game is being played. You wouldn't want a person to throw a flag when they don't need to, because I had several incidents where, during my years of officiating, where I've had to ask some of my crew members to give me their flags during halftime because I thought it was a little bit much, and the kids wasn't getting the quality kind of officiating they need. And I did. I just asked for it because I was the head referee. So, but I think that's where you're going with this, in that you want to see that in the high school. But the other part, it might be good that the debate team release their fundings that they receive, and others too.
Well, thank you very much, Coach. Where this bill is focused on is the sanctioning body, and not at the team, level. Those records at the team level really already are public records, because they're subject to the Open Records Act, as far as how the athletics department of the high school allocates resources, or how the fine arts area allocates their resources. Those would all be available as part of the school's budget now. But back to the report about officials and those sorts of things, I think where we're looking at is trying to make sure, and the point about the Title 20 is that's what gets us into schools that are spending taxpayer resources. And so their activities are going to be subsidized by the taxpayer. And so the sanctioning body ought to be transparent back through to the taxpayer as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Being involved at both, fine. Being involved with high school sports and being fortunate enough to go to I believe it's Hugh McKessick. Remember what that stadium was in Albany for track, and to Macon for basketball, and of course baseball's on a home and home. I've never been to the Gold Dome. I mean the Georgia Dome, and you know, it's special for those kids to be able to go to those places, and it's more convenient. Like in baseball, we had to travel all the way to Folkestone, down close to Representative Spencer's area, and that's very expensive too, traveling both ways. The ticket is an issue for me, the price of the ticket. I've been to all those things, and again, on the other hand, everybody that I've been on the gate before, and everybody comes to the gate and they say, well, I'm with the team. Well, everybody there is with the team, so I don't know how we would get around the 4 passes. Being new here and not really knowing what the problem here is, what I said when I came down here, I'd find out what the problem was. And I'm a guy that likes transparency, but can you just tell us a little bit of what the problem was that brought this on? Or
Well, it's a great question, and I thank my neighbor for it. I was going to say, I'm glad to have my first question from the representative that has the western part of my Senate district. For me, the real underlying issue in why I brought 288 is the perpetual questions. I don't like unanswered questions. So from the time I was a boy and playing, people always said that GHSA has all these assets. GHSA, has all these retirement plans. I candidly don't think all of that's true. But we don't know. And their revenue stream is subsidized by the taxpayer. I mean, there's no other way to sort of look at it. It is. And so the revenue that they derive comes at a subsidy from taxpayers across the state who basically facilitate all of the activities that they're generating their revenue from. And so when I asked my superintendents in my district, when I asked my athletics directors and head coaches, well, is all that true? Where does the money go? Where does the $20 ticket price go? By and large, nobody could answer. I mean, my across the street neighbor was my high school football coach. He retired after years as a coach, and he said, well, even when you know people on the executive committee, it's hard to really know where all of it is. It's a big organization and all this kind of stuff. And so I think let's stop asking questions and let's all know what it is and find out, which my hope for these folks and others is that we find out that the resources are being used the most efficient way possible, and everybody says, that's the right price. That is the right way to do it. They're doing the right thing for our kids. That makes me happy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I appreciate you being here to answer these questions. And I think a lot of the questions of our committee were important and valid. Of the issues they hit on were certainly meaningful and ought to be addressed. But as I read your bill, the transparency that you're seeking here with the disclosure of these financial statements, to the extent that those financial statements share information about pricing, salaries, allocation of resources to rent of whatever facilities or whatever, it seems that this bill will serve the purpose of beginning to shine the light on many of the questions that members of the board have asked. And then as that light is shined and we begin to see the allocation of these resources, then would you agree that perhaps the more appropriate place to get the final answers to some of these questions we heard today might be that the governing board and the organization that applies the governance, that sets the ticket fees, that decides who these referees are going to be, or the various staffing places. But this is a step to begin to see the allocation of those resources to better evaluate the use of taxpayer dollars.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. That's exactly right. I think this helps us ask better questions because we actually have information to base our questions on. And that's really why I welcomed Senator Underman's addition and revival. I actually discussed that with the chair here of the Oversight Committee, because now you got information. you can have an opportunity to have an informed conversation and say, well, how does this break out? Where does this fall? Tell us a little bit more to understand it. And like I say, it may be that the answers are all the ones we would love to hear, which is the good answers. If not, then we have a conversation about what direction we take from there.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. I don't see any questions at this time. If you would bear with us for a few minutes, you have the speakers list up there.
I've got it for you just from Mr. Yao, I think.
Mr. Yao, you're up, sir. Please.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. These questions that are being asked, and working with Senator Bethel on this, he has already indicated that all of this information is on the GHS website. 17-page document is there available for anybody that wants to pull it up and look at it. We have fulfilled his request on this. From that standpoint, gosh, what is the necessity of making this into a law when it's already there? Anybody who wants to look at it can. The Oversight Committee, we have had this before. I think GHSA will welcome the Oversight Committee that will be able to answer questions that this member of the General Assembly might have. Also, anybody who is associated with a public school and or membership of a private school that belongs to the Georgia High School Association has a representative that is on the executive committee that are elected by regions. These people know who they are. If they have a question, all they have to do is go to their representative that's on the executive committee and ask for an answer. If that member does not know it, he can go to Dr. Swearingen or other members of the staff of the Georgia High School Association and get an answer. If they wish to appear before the executive committee in their fall and spring meetings, all they have to do is ask to be on the agenda. So it's an open for business type organization. They are under the rules of open public information. All you have to do is request it. They will have to supply it to you because public records are there. When the law was changed, Georgia High School Association came under that. We're willing to work with and cooperate in any manner in which we can to answer anybody's questions. Representative Martin and I have worked together in the past on this. He served on the last and the only other advisory committee, and I think it was fairly productive the times that they met. It opened some doors and answered some questions that had not been asked or answered before. So that's it. It's there for the people to look at, open to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Yao. Questions of Mr. Yao. For those who know, he represents the
Georgia High School
Association at the Capitol here, and is very familiar with the operation. You've been with them a number of years, 3 or 4 years, I believe, right, Mr. Yao?
Long time.
Had a little bit more than 3 or 4 years. I'm kidding with him, of course. He knows quite a bit about the organization. Any questions for Mr. Yao? As I mentioned to you before the meeting, I do want to sound this off. I'm not sure if we'd love to have Dr. Swearingen come back for this committee. I'll give him a
whenever know if I can have at least a 24-hour notice.
Yes, sir. We know he's
of
busy.
Your meeting. I have Dr. Swearingen here to answer any questions that the committee might have.
And I haven't, again, Senator, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it, but we wanted to invite Dr. Swearingen back if we have questions about some of these other things that popped up. But also, I know there was a report on the news station. It may have been more than one this week about there's a lot going around with the NFL settlement on concussions and the like, and one or more news stations have taken, I believe it's the Duke or the Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. You're absolutely right. The Virginia Tech rating system for helmets, and there's about which high schools have which ones. And I was going to give Dr. Swearingen an opportunity to call because I know the Georgia High School Association has certain prescriptive methodologies in the equivalent for varsity athletics.
A survey and a research that was done by the University of Georgia over about a 3-year period of time. And that report has been presented, and Georgia High School Association has policies that cover what you do in case of a concussion, and also on the evaluation of helmets.
Right, and I was just going to give, we visit with him on other things. I'm not sure that perhaps Chairman Coleman's Education Committee, and maybe even Health and Human Services may be the more proper thing, but since the conversation is going here, I wanted to give the Georgia High School Association an opportunity to speak sort of for its member schools, that I do believe that they are taking care of the young men and women in athletics in all areas.
Sure.
Because I know there's even lacrosse helmets that they wear for men and women. And
We'll
so
have him
forth.
here.
They do a lot of job. Did you have further questions? Mr. Yao, did you have a question? No, he waves, and do you have one?
I do.
All right.
Spell his name for me.
Y-O-W.
Mr. Young.
Mr. Yao, would you, Representative Harrell had a question, if you wouldn't mind.
Your response kind of intrigued me. I introduced a piece of legislation earlier this year that dealt with a completely unrelated organization that also receives taxpayer-funded dollars, that also is subject to open records, as your organization is. And apparently, like yours, miraculously, the information I requested showed up on a website, and their response was identical to yours. We're now publishing it. Why do we need a law? So I'm just curious to what negative connotation you see in the legislature passing a bill that says an organization that receives taxpayer money will make this information publicly available.
Just turn that microphone up there.
To begin with, on Senator Bethel's bill, there was already on the website a financial statement. It did not have the complete breakdown that Senator Bethel is asking in his legislation. And we met what he requested on that. Any negative connotation on it, I'm not sure there is any negative other than passing a law for something that's already in existence. What is the necessity of it? We have enough laws as it is on the books now on things that I'm not sure everybody's following, and this is already there. Of course, it's up to the wishes of this body to do whatever they so desire. We will meet the requirements of the law, but we're already doing it before there is a law.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. And I think that you raise a good point, and I would like to, and Senator Bethel, if you want to come back to the mic, if you wish to have a few words, compliment Mr. Yao on working. This was a lot different than we had in 2005 and 6. I think there was a lot more curiosity and with members of the GHSA about the legislature's involvement in the committee, and I think we proved we had a real good relationship and good community.
The advisory committee had a good relationship. Even prior to that, the web page really was kind of bad. And then the advisory committee, in working with them and working with Representative Martin, said, hey, let's improve your web page. And I think the web page now that is available to the public is really all-inclusive. It answers 9 million questions that are out there for people that are interested in it. And normally, only unless you've got a child that's participating, not that many other people are interested. But it's there in case they want it. And I think this is something that the advisory committee did and kind of got the high school association to say, okay, hey, we need to have a good web page.
Yes, yes.
You got to.
We'll do. Let's wind up. We'll find that if we can. Thank you, Mr. Yao. Now, I would just want to end this, and I'll go to the senator. In 2005-6, I know there was a lot of skepticism by the members of the Georgia High School, some school members. It worked out really well. I mean, one gentleman was quite upset with me, and what business of it was ours, and we communicated that it was taxpayers' money, as you have. And Mr. Yao was always very supportive, as was Dr. Swearingen, and the fear, was laid aside as the Oversight Committee did what it sought to do and did not get in the direct day-to-day business at all. That said, and I'll say this is my last comment of the day, I continue to get comments because people know I have been involved in athletics for the last 25 years at one level or other. And the Georgia High School Association is very powerful because when you cut teams into regions, you set people that can get into playoffs, and when you get into playoffs, you are more apt to get a scholarship. And when you're more apt to get a scholarship, that turns into dollars. And so I think it is very important. I appreciate their willingness to support the efforts. I appreciate their willingness to go as far as they did and look forward to the continued communication. Senator Beth, let me tell you what my posture is. I want to get your substitute, put that together. We'll put another hearing together and have communication with the Georgia High School about anything additional that goes in the bill, give everybody ample opportunity to have a open and honest deliberative process on anything else that goes in there, and get your legislation moving so that we are not a day 39 or day 40 event for you. But I don't think you would expect us to take it up on Monday, so we're not hurting to get out of committee today. With that said, if you have any further remarks for the committee, we'll move along.
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate the hearing. I do have just the letter size version. It's LC 335498S. I'm going to give it to the chair. I've asked for replacement 0102. I don't know what happened to the original 0102. We tried to send it your way, and I apologize for you not having it available. I do want to just speak to the issue that the vice chair raised, because I think it is important, and that is it's partly instructive that the information was not previously available. What was on the website and what was provided to me on a multi-million-dollar organization was a page and a half that purported to be a budget, which was really just a line item breakout, and about a 3/4 page financial report, which was really just a statement of cash flows. I think that what we have now is much better. And I don't doubt that that'll never change. I really don't. Dr. Swearingen, I know, is retiring, but they're not trying to move the ball. The other point that I think is critical is that right now they're in a virtual monopoly position. It doesn't mean they will always be. It doesn't mean there aren't other organizations that would fit this definition that should be subjected to the same level of transparency. And that's why you put it in code. You say anytime an organization is being subsidized by taxpayer funds, they should be transparent. And so that's the source. It's not to try and beat up on these folks. It's to try and sort of put forward the principle. So I'm going to give the chair this. I appreciate it. I do appreciate the hearing. And as long as I'm not taking care of an administration bill, I'll be at whatever committee meeting you call me back for.
No, absolutely. We understand where we fit in the food chain, but even though the house is above the second floor, we understand. And I mean that floor 3 versus floor 2.
Altitude.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we'll work with you on that. And I want to say to the committee members, please take the additional language that was passed out. It's just in 20-2-2100. You can look at how the committee and familiarize yourself with that. That's got to be very close to what the senator is going to hand us. We'll also look and consult, Senator, you can point out to us where on the website that link is, because then members can look at that link. In the meantime, I would encourage you to do that before we come back, and we will set a meeting probably sometime around next Wednesday, depending on the House and Senate schedule, to hear this bill and move that forward. If there's no objection from the committee, if there's no further business, we'll stand adjourned. No objection, we are adjourned.